The perception versus the actual event and the reason behind the trauma. So let's first start with an exercise. Name 4 traumatic events. Imagine situations that could be traumatic for someone. And write down in the forum at least 4 traumatic events that one could experience. Now pause the video while you do that. Write down in the forum 4 traumatic experiences or events that one could experience. Now watch the following video clip. This is what we call inattentional blindness. We only see what we actually focus on. We only see what we want to see or what we can see. We only see what we believe. And there are a few amazing metaphors about that. One of them is the ancient American Indians. They were sitting across the ocean and they were just looking at the ocean. And there was a ship coming, but a notion of such a large ship was so out of their way of thinking, such out of their way of believing, that they simply could not visually see the ship because they couldn't believe it was there. So their mind kind of erased the visual information because they could not believe it was there. An experiment they did with small little kittens is a group of kittens were brought up in a room with only horizontal stripes. Only horizontal stripes. Another group of kittens were brought up in a room with only vertical stripes. So the entire room was covered with either only horizontal stripes or only vertical stripes. After they reached a certain age, the kitten was set loose in a normal room. And what they noticed, the kittens that grew up with only horizontal stripes did not know how to recognize virtual structures, virtual stripes, such as legs of a table. They just couldn't see it and bumped their heads against it. Anything vertical, their mind, their entire brain was not wired to see that. The kittens that grew up in a room with only vertical stripes, they could see the table legs. They didn't bump to the table heads, but they could not see the horizontal stripes. So their mind, their brain was not wired to see horizontal lines. And this is actually the amazing part about vision and recognition, is we only see what we want to see, or what we can see, or what we believe to be true. Even if you look at the physical brain structure, is most people think we see with the actual eyeball. But the only thing the eyeball does is the lens of your camera. You can exchange the lens in some cameras. The eye is just the lens. It actually creates from the visual information an electrical signal, which has it has information, but it does not have the image in there. The electrical signal travels to the back of our brain, the occipital part, the back of our brain, the visual cortex, and only there it's transformed into an image. So we don't see with our eyes, we see actually with the back of our head. We see with our brain. And that brings up to a notion of the communication model. This model is extensively used in NLP to explain what's going on inside. And even though I will share a little bit about it, we can do like a 4-hour session of this. We won't get into that much detail, but there are some things that you really need to understand. For example, we have external events and information. That is our senses, right? Everything we see, everything we hear, everything we kinesthetically feel, things we smell, olfactory, and things we taste, gustatory. Those are the only external information that enters our awareness. Based on our perception, we change that information into an internal picture, an internal map, or an internal representation. The way we do that is on a language level is we change it a little bit, we distort it, we generalize it a little bit, it's something like X, and we delete a lot of information because we cannot remember everything. Other things that intervene with this information processing is like memories. If you have a certain memory that you were bitten by a dog, and now you feel that a dog is biting you, you will create a different internal representation than when you have a memory of dogs are lovely. Your decisions, your values, your beliefs, your attitudes, even language has an difference, has an impact on how external events and informations are recoded into internal representation. And especially people who speak multiple languages, ask them, how is your life different when you're talking English or when you're talking language X versus language Y? When we meet in person, you can ask me, how is my life different when I talk English compared to when I talk Dutch? Because my life is different when I talk different languages. Ask any person who thinks in multiple languages. Not just talks, but he needs to think in multiple languages. So the external events, what we experience, is recoded, is transformed eventually in an internal representation. That internal representation gives us a feeling, and that feeling gives us a body, position, physiology, and those three combined are geared towards our behavior, delivers our behavior. Now, if you look at most of the stress research is based on external events. So, for example, the most famous stress research is done already quite a few years ago by Roms and Arahe. They said like you experience something in the real life, and that's either stressful or not stressful. You're getting married, that's either stressful or not stressful. You're losing your job, that's either stressful or not stressful. They did not take into account anything that you believe about marriage, anything that you believe about a job. Probably one of the reasons why is because that's harder to measure. You can make a really easy list. Did you experience this in your life? Did you experience that in your life? Did you experience a loss of a job? Did you experience marriage in your life? If so, tick the box. And the more boxes you have, the more stress you have. However, reality is not that simple. It all depends on how you interpret that event. On a very basic level, if you don't see the event, if there's no senses involved in experiencing the event, you won't have any traumatic experience, nor a happy experience. If you don't see it, hear it, feel it, smell it, or taste it, as far as you're concerned, it's not there. So it cannot be traumatic. However, your mind, even though it's not there, but your mind can create a trauma out of nothing, out of thin air, out of imagination. Just think of suddenly sitting in a room, and there are about 100 people in the room, and you're sitting there for a training, and suddenly the trainer walks up to you, shakes your hand, holds your hand, asks you to stand up, and walk with him to the stage to share your experience. Suddenly, even now maybe, you're thinking, holy moly, and certain bodily processes going on. But there is no one here. It's just in your mind at this time. Or imagine a beautiful lemon. It's tasty, it's smelly, it smells great, it has a little bit of this moisture around it, and cut it in half. And while you cut it in half, you can even smell it. Smell the scent of this nice, juicy yellow lemon. And you can even look at it and squeeze it a little bit so that there are a few drops going down. And then cut it again in half. Just imagine. And now you have a quarter, right? And you can observe the different colors of yellow, maybe different smells, different textures of the outside versus the inside, and really touch the inside. And now bring it up to your nose to really smell it well. Now take a bite. Did your saliva production change? For most people it does. But there is no lemon. It's just in your mind. There is no lemon. So even when there's nothing, in your mind you can create stuff that suddenly appears real. So there's not so much value in knowing what happened to a person. It's more important how they perceived it, what they made out of it, what is their internal representation. So the event itself is never ever traumatic. Think of that. The event itself is never traumatic. Marriage is an event. In and of itself, it's never traumatic. Death of a spouse, the event itself, is never traumatic. The facts, the hardcore facts, are never traumatic. Something that you can record on a video that you can see and just observe the facts, it's never traumatic. However, the perception can be traumatic. The interpretation, the map you create out of that can be traumatic. The way you feel about it can be traumatic. Some people can get traumatized by a very small little spider. Other people, they can have the biggest meanest, most poisonous spider and just be in awe how beautiful it is. The facts themselves, the event itself, is never traumatic. Now, there's an assignment for you. And this assignment revolves around a few major stressors. And these are a few of the major stresses that were defined originally in the research of Rome's Rahe. And the first topmost stressor is death of a spouse. For each of the items that come up, write in the forum, write a new interpretation or a belief that transforms this, basically this neutral event, into a stressful event. And at the same time, write up an interpretation or perception or a belief that transforms this neutral event into a happy event. So we have this event 1, which is called death of a spouse. How do you need to perceive that? How do you need to view that? What do you need to believe about yourself, about the others, about the world, in order for this event to be stressful? And that's part A of the exercise. Part B of the exercise is death of a spouse. What do you need to perceive? How do you need to feel? What do you need to believe about this event to make it into a happy experience? And this is just to play around and really start noticing that the event itself is never traumatic. It's the perception of it. So for each of the items that I will list, there are about 4 items. Write in the forum A, what do you need to believe and what do you need to perceive? What do you need to experience in order for this neutral event to be traumatic? And what do you need to perceive, believe that transforms this neutral event into a happy event? So death of a spouse, divorce, marriage, and being fired at work. So for all 4, create what do you need to do to believe to transform it into a stressful event, and what do you need to do to transform it into a happy event? I think this takes about 15 minutes. And write the answers in the forum.
Now continue and subscribe to our platform and get more additional free resources and other related videos, also free. Just go to free.biocompass.org.